There's another thing we got to talk about.
All right, well, go ahead.
Now, this goes back to what I mentioned before, the 2,730-year curse. Now,
yeah, okay.
Now, have you ever heard about that?
No. Go ahead.
You've never heard about it? Okay.
I'm sorry to say, but I hadn't.
Okay, now,
I don't know everything.
well, here's an interesting thing. This is one of the most important things in the Bible, not only where we are today, but the history of the earth itself. And why is it that you've never heard of it? Why is it? I think it was my 50th birthday. I was at Sukkot, and there was a fellow preaching about this. He gave a teaching on it. I'd never heard of it before.
2,000 and how many?
That was
no, the curse is what now? No, the curse is what now?
2,730-year curse. Now, a couple years ago, back in 2004, when I first heard about this, I don't even know if the internet was doing much, but you probably couldn't find it. Now you punch up 2730-year curse, and there's all kinds of stuff on the internet talking about it. Now, I don't know how many people are talking about it, but I've made this point to a number. I'm going to read you what it says in Leviticus chapter 26. Now, the interesting thing about the word Leviticus, you think Levi's, well, those Levi's were the priests. That was the priests of the Old Covenant, the Old Temple. We don't got nothing to do with the Levi's. Well, in Hebrew, the word is Vayikra. It's not Leviticus, it's Vayikra. And the word Vayikra means, and he called. The word Kuf, Resh, Aleph, Kra, in Hebrew, literally means to call, to invoke, to summon, to proclaim, to teach to read. It's a reader of the Scriptures. It's to encourage one another to learn how to read the Scriptures. And it means Yahweh himself has called his people to come read his words. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a whole different connotation than the book Leviticus. Mm-hmm. Now, I wonder why that would be. Why would they change the book where Yahweh says, I have called you to come to meet with me as I teach you to learn to read my words, at an appointed gathering, an appointed assembly of my people with me, and they changed it to be the name of a book of foreign priests of a bygone era of a disdained covenant. Do you kind of see a conspiracy theory going on there? Nevertheless, this is what he says. Verse 3, if you will follow my decrees and observe my commandments and perform them, follow, observe, and perform. Then, now here's the blessing, I will provide your rains in their time. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of weather modification stuff going on these days, about HARP and all that.
Oh, sure. Chemtrails, the whole 9 yards.
The land will give its produce, and the tree of the field will yield its fruit. Well, thank you, Monsanto, not with GMOs, right? Your threshing will last until the vintage, and the vintage will last until the sowing. That means you'll have such an abundance of stuff, you'll just be pulling the stuff in. You can't get your work done on time. You'll eat your bread to satiety, which is you'll be saturated, you'll be satisfied, and you will dwell securely in your land. Mm-hmm. No enemies. I will provide peace in the land, and you will lie down with none to frighten you. I will cause wild beasts to withdraw from the land. Yahweh will cause the wild beasts to withdraw, and a sword will not cross your land. You will pursue your enemies, and they will fall before you by the sword. 5 of you will pursue 100, 100 of you will pursue 10,000, and your enemies will fall before you by the sword. I will turn my attention to you, and I will make you fruitful and increase you, and I will establish my covenant with you. You will eat very old grain and remove the old to make way for the new. You can't even eat it all up.
Yeah, you just be bringing in the stuff. Yeah.
I will place my sanctuary among you, and my spirit will not reject you. I will walk among you. I will be Elohim unto you, and you will be my people. I am Yahweh your Elohim, who took you out of the land of Egypt from being their slaves. I broke the staves of your yoke, and I led you standing up erect. Now this is Yahweh's covenant with Israel. Sure. This has nothing to do with the Christian church. And this has nothing to do with the Jews. This is Yahweh's covenant with the confederated 12 tribes of Israel. But if you will not listen to me and will not perform all these commandments, if you consider my decrees loathsome, and if your being rejects my ordinances so as not to perform all my commandments, so that you annul my covenant, then I will do the same to you.
Now wait, now you just made a statement that I want to clarify and make sure of, okay? This is true for today and good for today.
This is a perpetual, everlasting
I know it is, yeah. I just preached on this the other night. This never ends, correct?
Perpetual means without end.
Absolutely, it's without end. And let me add one more thing to what he said. That's why I said the other night the cotton picking pivots have to be crunk up just to even think about growing a GMO. Go ahead.
Now this is what Yahweh says. Remember I said with the ayin, with the measure you use, it's measured to you, both in this world and the world to come, not only with the way that we treat our brethren, our brothers, our fellow neighbors, and even our enemies. Yeshua said, pray for enemies, right? Be merciful to your enemies.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying.
I'm just being honest.
What he's saying is with the measure you relate to one another is the measure that's going to be measured back at you. But I have found numerous verses all through the scriptures, that's a whole other study, but where Yahweh says, this is the way it works, boys. I'm going to speak. The attitude that you choose to have regarding my word is the attitude which determines the way I'm going to now respond to you. He says right here, if you don't listen, don't perform the commandments, if you loathe my decrees, if your being, your soul, rejects my ordinances, so that you don't perform my commandments, you have thus then annulled my covenant, then I will do the same to you. And there's another place he says, if you return to me, I will return to you.
Absolutely.
He says, if you don't listen to me when I speak, I will plug my ears while you scream, while your enemies tear you to pieces.
Amos,
he says, if you behave toward my words with a casual disregard of like, whatever, then he says, when you pray to me, I'm going to say whatever, and I'm not going to listen to your prayers.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, it says, the prayer of one who has turned his back on the Torah is an abomination unto Yahweh's own stench in his nostrils.
And people don't take this serious today, Eric, but they better, hadn't they?
They better listen to these words.
You better believe it.
Have you ever heard in the Christian church of the pastor said, you guys who don't like the words of the Torah, of the Old Testament, don't bother praying, because if you pray, your prayers will be considered an abomination and a stench to your Heavenly Father's nose.
They're not going to
You see, your prayers are a model of the altar of incense, and it says the prayers of the saints, or the Kodishim, the Kadishi, the holy ones, the Kadosh ones, are as a sweet-smelling savor that goes up to him. Who then are the Kadosh ones? Who? It's an incense of pleasantness to him.
To God.
But who are the Kadosh ones? The ones who
Keep
will
his instruction.
listen, perform the commandments, and consider his decrees to be a pleasant delicacy that we want to have in our mouth as we speak. For example, people say, oh, we can't keep these perfectly. He never said we had to keep them perfectly. He says observe to keep them. Furthermore, he said this, I'm going to tell you how easy it is. He says, now, on the 15th day of the first month of the year in springtime, the month of the Aviv, when the barley is ripe, the 15th day, you are to eat no leavened bread for a week. And as a matter of fact, the day before, get it all out of your house. And you're going to eat unleavened bread for 7 days. Let there not be a piece of leavening of a cracker or a crumb found anywhere in your dwellings for a week. And then your children will say, why are we doing this? And you will tell them the story of the Exodus, how I let you escape under my strong hand, and I defeated your enemies and brought you out from your yoke of slavery and brought you into my covenant, where now you're my slave. Of course, the word slave, obed, is the same word obedience, which is the same word for worship. A worshiper is an obed, so the book Obadiah is a worshiper of Yah, which is a servant of Yah. The same exact word in Hebrew, worship and obedience, obey, same exact word. And so as you tell your children these words, the Torah will be in your mouth. And the commandment in Deuteronomy chapter 6 is, you will speak of these things. Teach them diligently to your children. When you lie down, when you rise up, when you sit in your house, when you walk on the way. Put them on your arms, on your forehead, between your eyes as frontlets, and write them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. Speak of these things. So when people say, oh, we can't keep the Torah, speak of these things is the Torah commandment. You show me one verse where Yahweh ever said, you better keep these things or you're going to hell. I don't see that written in the Old Testament. Now that's another matter that Yeshua addressed about heaven and hell, but nowhere in the Old Testament do I ever see Yahweh say, if you don't keep these words perfectly, you're going to hell. That's not what he says. What he says is, speak of these things. We, by having this conversation, are speaking of his things and keeping his commandments.
And we are blessings.
And receiving his blessings.
Absolutely.
He says, if you will not listen, you out there listening, if you're listening, you are keeping these commandments of Leviticus 26, which sets you up, if you follow what you hear regarding his decrees and his commandments to perform them, then you can read, I just read you verses 4 through 13 about the blessing.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to go into the whole curse because it's lengthy, but I'm going to read you a couple things about the curse because it has to do with the 2,730-year curse. He says...
Wait, Pete, speak for a minute, I'll be right back. Let Pete introduce himself. Don't go nowhere.
All right.
Sure, catch me off guard.